I'm going to put it. How can I turn my chair and get to it where I can use it, physically? Where is it going to sit? I don't have room here. Oh, then, well, I'll just buy it and I'll figure it out later. If you don't have anywhere to put it, you're not going to be able to figure it out. You're never going to use it, and you're also not going to know enough about it to really utilize it to get a value out of it, how to use what it's made for. So you need to research the material before you buy it. What kind of ins does it have? What kind of outs does it have? What sort of protocols does it support? How am I going to use it? I'm going to patch it up, in to out, out to in, all that stuff.
Okay, and the next question is, I guess since you have I guess so much experience with music, what do you actually listen to in the car? What kind of music would you listen to just to relax and stuff, not work?
I practice in the car, sort of. So it depends on what I'm doing. I've got a gig in 2 weeks I've got an 80s cover band. Hey, we need to learn Jesse's Girl. Okay, Jesse's Girl, cool. So I'll listen to Jesse's Girl in the car this week, and over and over, listening to how the parts are broken down. Listen to it's there are two types of listening, right? We have analytical and what's the other one? It's been a while since I've taught out of a textbook. Critical listening and analytical listening. Okay, analytical listening is let's just take the whole thing in and check it out. Is there anything feel? How's it feel? Does it feel good? Yeah, it feels good. The mix is good. Critical listening is wait, let's listen to that bass drum. Is it squeaking? So in this case, I'm critically listening to parts, guitar parts. Are there two parts? What is the other guitarist going to do? What am I going to do? Because that's kind of what I do in the 80s band. I kind of break out the music direction, right? Hey, play this, and I'll play this. You guys know Richie? I play with Richie. Yeah, Richie's the other guy. So, and he's been working on Jesse's Girl. He knows all the chords and stuff, and he's working on a solo. And just the other day, hallway conversation. Oh, I'm having a little trouble with the solo. I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. I said, I'll work on the solo. And the way it's laid out structurally, it makes sense that the solo is played by the other guy who comes back in on top of this normal chord rhythm that happens. So so music in the car is working on stuff. If it's not that, the enjoyment side will be listening to singers and singing along with people that you guys probably never listened to. My favorite thing right now that I'm listening to is Glen Campbell. It's called Meet Glen Campbell. It was recorded 2 years ago. If you guys don't know who Glen Campbell is, he was the session guitarist in the 60s. Played on everything you ever listened to, from Strangers in the Night to Tequila. Played on everything. He's an amazing singer. He's still alive. He's in Scotland. He's 78 years old. And he was one of the first big superstars. He had this primetime TV show. He used to co-host or guest star the Smothers Brothers variety show. When the Smothers Brothers got canceled for political reasons, the Smothers Brothers got smart and they made Glenn his own show. Glenn was too much of a hillbilly to even know what was going on, really. He was doing jokes he didn't even understand at the time. But besides from that, he's a musical prodigy. He's a genius musician. And he's actually a pretty sharp guy, just not book smart. He's a hillbilly. He was born in the piney woods or whatever and never educated, But so in an interview, they ask him, so you've been playing guitar your whole life? And he goes, not yet. I mean, that's the kind of wit he has. Very intelligent guy, but just not smart, not educated. Two different things, right? So I listen to his stuff because he's singing new songs, and I just love the way his voice sounds. So, and then I'll go back and listen to bands that you guys have never heard of, probably. There's a band that you have heard of called the Electrolyte Orchestra. My favorite producer, Jeff Lynne. He had there was a spin-off group that happened without him from the drummer who kept ELO going. And they had a falling out with Jeff Lynne, and Bev Bevan, who was his partner, got all new people. And he got this guy by the name of Eric Troyer. Eric Troyer, you've heard of. You just don't know him again. Same thing. He's been on tour with Billy Joel a bunch of years. He's on every album you can imagine. He's on Imagine with John Lennon. He's actually doing background vocals. Woman. He's the first voice you hear on Uptown Girls on the recording by Billy Joel. It's Eric Troyer. Amazing keyboardist and singer. And he's one of the main guys with what's now the Electrolyte Orchestra, which is now called the Orchestra. You're never going to hear them. They're playing every night in Scotland and wherever. I think they're kind of laid back this year. And there's another guy named Phil Bates, who was in a band called Trickster back in the 70s, who never really hit it big. But these are really amazing people that just haven't hit the mainstream, that have had a whole life and whole story to tell. So I like digging into history and facts. You guys talk to James, you'll find out that I like horror movies, and so I know a lot about horror movies. Talking about how do you learn about filmmaking, watching, understanding, reading books. I collect books on the Hammer films and English horror movies, and I read about the stories. I have somewhere in my collection I've got a book on George Romero, how that got started. Those guys were ad agency guys. They were sitting around, they had all the equipment. They were black tie, suit, short hair, you know, maybe a little over the years, but they're pretty clean-cut ad guys. And they were like, hey, let's make a movie. We got all the stuff. It was a smart idea, you know. More of that happening now than then, but back then it mattered. Now it doesn't seem to matter as much because you're not doing anything new. It's hard to be noticed. Back then, when they made the little goofy zombie movie, it was like, whoa, no one's ever done anything like that before. And so that got them into, you know, launch their careers as filmmakers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Oh, it's our turn.
Hey, Mark.
Hi.
It sounds like you've done a lot of things, but you're still not quite doing exactly what you want to do.
Yes and no. You're exactly right, but there's two sides of that. One is I have not hit the filmmaking music at the level I should be doing it at in terms of income and kind of the main thing I do. I do enjoy doing all the different things. It's one thing because I've had to do these things and because they all fit under the same umbrella. They're all necessary and they're all beneficial, and I enjoy doing all of them. And so I do enjoy that fact that I'm not doing just one thing. And I will tell you, having had, because let's backtrack one, I have done what I wanted to do. I did it for 10 years. I sat in an office on 6th Street and I made music and did audio production. Now, I didn't ask to do the voice production. I didn't ask to deal with all the hassles and dealing with the project management stuff and all that. And on top of that, I can tell you some stories about those 10 years where it wasn't all fun.
Yeah.
You know, where I wasn't getting credit for some of the work I was doing and I was getting grief for some of the work I was doing. But it was a successful 10 years and I did a lot of work and all that. It would be nice to you know, do more music. But what I'm getting is I did do it. And it got old.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. If you do the same thing every day, it gets old. You know, I worked, my office was above the elephant room. I'd have deadlines. The next day I had to have this thing done. And you know how many times the animators and the editors would give me the edit the day before the deliverable was due, and I had a night to score an intro movie or a cutscene. So I would be up all night with the elephant room smoke coming up through my floor because I was right by Kyoto's and Elephant Room. There's a landing there. You go down to the Elephant Room and up to Kyoto's on 4th Street in Congress. My office was that double glass door that you stepped off of between Kyoto's and that's where I was at for about 3 years. And then I had an office further inside, right above the Elephant Room. And I mean, the cigar smoke came up. And I'm hearing jazz through the floorboards, and I'm putting headphones on trying to write techno, bop, classical music or whatever for computer games, you know. And it got old. So yes and no.
So if you could have your dream job now, what would it be?
I think it's a toss-up between the film scoring, the performing, and the magic performing. I have three things I really enjoy doing. Video editing would probably fall in there too, because it's a newer area for me, but I still see it as kind of the same thing. So, and making film would be another one. It's really, I'm very torn, but I would say it's definitely filmmaking and music composition for film would be probably the main ones.
If you had one.
If I just had to pick one.
Yes, just one.
Realistically, it's going to have to be the music, just because I know that's the thing I'm best at.
Okay.
It's not so much what I enjoy doing. You know, I'm very practical, and it's like I know I'm really good at that. The other thing is I'm getting good at it, and I'm depending on the day I'm better at it. But you know, that I know I'm good at already, and so that's the one.
You're confident in that.
I'm more confident in that.
Yeah.
And I just know that more people would agree with me on that.
Yeah.
If they said, "What should Mark be doing?" Okay, yeah, I think that's what he should be doing. However, my whole life has been, you really shouldn't be doing that, and you're not really good at this, and you're not really good at that.
But
I've been getting it even with the music sometimes.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, what about, but I mean really from your own perspective without anybody else involved?
Oh, I think the music's still the best.
Still the best for you.
And using technology, and there's different levels of music. There's composition, there's producing, you know, there's arranging, and there's performing and all that. And I'm probably best at using the technology to create the music and the marriage of those two, the composition with the technology.
Yeah.
Because I can create a score of any style or size by myself, which is a way to save a lot of money to filmmakers.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to go. Now I would love to go. I dream. That's my dream, is to get to the point where there's a budget enough to pay me where I actually get paid well.
Yeah.
And there's budget to bring in an arranger and hire an orchestra and actually perform some of the works that way. I don't have enough theory knowledge because I didn't go to school, as I mentioned earlier, for 8 years or whatever to become a hardcore theory guy. You know, really know my arranging. Really, I read music, but I read, as I explain to people, I read music really well. I just don't happen to read music on anything that I currently play, and it's true. You hand me a piece of music, I can give you the rhythms, and I just don't play that instrument. You know, and the instruments I play, I don't read very well for because I never practiced that skill.
Yeah. So what do you do to promote that aspect of your career right now? Do you have a website? Do you?
I have a website. A good question, and this is where my friends beat me up, and they beat me up on my magic shows. They beat me up on the music thing. They beat me up on teaching. Because I don't have time to do any promotion on any of the things because I'm too busy. Back to what I said earlier, just trying to be like you guys and pay bills month to month, right? So, but yes, I have a website. Yes, I have MarkWilsonComposer.com. MarkWilsonComposer.com. There it is. You can find me now. MarkWilsonComposer@gmail.com is my Gmail account I set up for that reason, which I'm starting to use as my main email because I get on my phone now that I'm Android compliant. I have a magic show website, which is AustinMagicShow.com. However, MarkWilsonComposer.com has it has my contact info and a quick little partial blog about something I did last year that was really cool that I never finished, and I haven't updated it in a year. And Austin Magic Show has something I started way back that looks really nice, but when you click on the links, they're all coming soon, except for one video that's ancient, and it hasn't been updated in a while. But what I have done is, in the meantime, is I've created some videos that I put up on YouTube. If you click, which I can give you links, because now if you called me and said, blah, 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 send me, I'd say, go here. For starters, go here. And now I'm starting to fire those out via email. Craigslist, send out, here, go here, listen to this, go here, listen to this. And that's working for getting potential gigs so far. If you do a search, I'll tell you if you want to write them down. If you do Mark Wilson Composer or Mark Wilson Portfolio, online portfolio, search in YouTube, you'll find there's 3 videos that have my picture with less beard and shorter hair. And there's a bunch of music tracks and just different things I've worked on and video clips and things. If you do Merlin the Wise, which is a character I play at Sherwood Forest Fair, Renfest, I play Merlin the Magician, which is why I'm growing the hair and the beard. Plus I've been getting some acting gigs more because of the hair and the beard. Because it gives me more of a character look, is what I've been told. You'll find that I'm the second one down, that video, and it's an excerpt of the stage show that we did at Sherwood, and it's just set to music. I'm playing the violin and badly, and it's just shots of things, so you kind of get an idea of what it is. There's no dialogue or anything really, except a couple lines that I say for that clip. But still, I'm using YouTube as a marketing tool.
So
and
YouTube is the main way.
Facebook and LinkedIn, and starting to network with that stuff. And if you look at my Facebook page, it's me with with all the gear around me, so that visual image of a music guy. I remember that guy. And I'm still primarily promoting the music composition, of course, because that's the thing I think will make the most money and the thing I should be doing the most.
Work from. Okay. Well, I think that's it.
I need to do more. And I go to do a magic gig, and my friend's like, "And you had cards, right? The business." I'm like, "No, I didn't have business cards. Sorry." But that's because a lot of my magic gigs are from agents. So they say don't give out business cards anyway.
Yeah.
I only get a few from public. Where personal bookings.
Yes.
Most of them come from agencies. So.
Yeah.
Yes and no. Music for TV. Let me think if there's been directly anything for TV. Well, I mean, yes. Y'all heard of Austin Day Tripper? Oh yeah. I've done music for Austin Day Tripper because of Richie. Because Richie knew that this is what I did, and so he was like, "Hey, Chet, I was doing some music for Austin Day Tripper," because he was actually doing a little bit before with Nate's dad. And he's like, "But I got this friend. This is what he does, and we could bang out." So we spent a weekend, and we did 3 or 4 tracks, and so they were in the last episode. So I've done Austin Day Tripper. I'm actually doing if you do a search for You Better Sing, it's a web series that is trying to promote music literacy. There's an African-American lady that's a singer and world music and just kids, and she's the director of the Austin Children's Choir. I've been working with her in the studio, producing all of her music for her show, and I've been helping her with video, hooking her up with animators, and it's a show that's going to be shown on KRU. Probably not on TV though, probably on web. So, but it's almost, and it may get on TV. So that was our general idea. So I've been working on that. I don't know if I've done I can't remember if anything else got put on TV. I did do some films back when I was working with content experts from Egypt. We did a CD-ROM about Egypt, and I'd done music for it for Discovery Channel Multimedia. And our content experts were BJ Fernia from UT, I think, and her husband, I can't remember his name. And they had been over in Palestine and just everywhere, and had done all these. It had these documentaries that they've been working on apart from their studies, and it was basically Israelis and Palestinians and is there going to be peace and the whole thing. And so they knew that I had done music in that style, so they basically said, "Hey, can we use your music for a documentary?" And so I did one edit and gave them my music, and so I was in a documentary back in the 90s. That was the only film I did, but I didn't really get handed a film to score. It was more of a let's just pop your music over here as kind of a favor, I'm trying to get TV. That's probably for TV. So radio, jingles. Worked as a DJ. My brother, by the way, is a like one of the main anchors for agricultural news.
Mm-hmm.
So he works in Oklahoma for like I guess is it I don't know if it's Clear Channel or who owns all that
Probably
stuff.
Clear Channel.
So I hear and I've been kind of privy to all that stuff just from talking to him too. So that's it. Yeah, web. Tons of web, tons of business-to-business stuff. We did a lot of edutainment games, not educational learning games as opposed to entertainment games, not shoot-'em-up games or fantasy role-playing games. Even though I love that stuff, most of it was stuff that wasn't quite as cool. Leapfrog toys, Discovery Channel, companies like Palladium, CBS. I did Schoolhouse Rock. I have a pretty cool like portfolio. We did Barbie, all kinds of stuff like that for the video game side of things. Films. If you look up the works of Bradley Jackson, he's a UT film graduate. I've done all of his short films. He hasn't done a feature yet. He's opted a script, I think. There's a contest called the Doorpost Film Project, which is, if you look on, just search for the Doorpost Film Project, and you'll find their site. And it's an online festival and competition, is the way I'd like to describe it. And a bunch of people submit. They pick the top 20. They take those 20. They narrow it down to like the top 5, and then they pay each of those top 5 to the budget for their film. Last year it was around $40,000. This year it was around $50,000. The filmmakers, Bradley Jackson, and that team that I've been working with has made the finals twice, which is unheard of, I think. So we're in the finals this year, and the film will be premiering, I think, Monday on the site. We're actually having a screening at Alamo Draft House this Saturday at 11 a.m., the South Lamar one, in the main room. Apparently they had a tech rehearsal, and they saw the film, and they moved us from the small one to the big one. The Alamo said, it looks really good. We're just moving to the big room,
It is good.
which is cool. So they changed the seating thing. So I just did one piece for the film, but I got to score the trailer. So
yeah, it's good. I saw it.
yeah, the trailers came out good anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see the film.
It was pretty cool.
They actually got a real famous guy from Hollywood to be the score for the majority of the film, and then they basically said, sorry, so long and thanks for the fish to me on this film, because the Doorpost is requesting they use really high-end people. And then they called me after about 3 weeks. The composer had called the director and said, all right, I can't do this scene. It's rocking, and it's out of my knowledge. I'm an orchestral guy. I play viola. And so they called me and said, hey, can you do this scene? I'm like, heck yeah, I'm back on board, so.
Cool, good. Okay, well, thanks, Mark. Sure. I've got to step away for the next guy.
So your ultimate dream would be to write the score for a feature film. So
sure, to make a living. Yeah, at this point, I'd be content with just making a decent living doing film scoring.
Yeah,
of any kind. I would like to start a production company. I'd like to do some film projects too and all that. But I'm like, let's just step one. And probably for me, because I do so many things and I'm so diversified, that's a blessing. That's also a curse. I need to kind of tell myself, let's try to focus on the one thing. I'm even really starting to put more effort into trying to find basically an agent, someone to promote me, because I now have a portfolio that's big enough that's substantial enough to go, yeah, this guy doesn't looks like he doesn't suck, and I'm hoping that, and I know that there's a lot of money to be made at what I do, so I don't need all of it. I need the work, and I need to be able to quit my day job, so to speak,
Yeah. So my first question is, what projects have you worked on that have been your favorite, or more along like what you would?
There's some weird stuff that you guys will never see. As far as because there's two sides. There's just something that's just cool because the visuals and the music is good, and I like the way it comes together. There's stuff that's cool because of who I'm working with. I got to do a project with Syd Mead. You guys know who Syd Mead is? If you're not, you should know. Somebody? Anyone? Yeah. Syd Mead is what we call a futurist. He's a designer, industrial designer. We'll just say designer. Now I'll tell you what you do know. You know who Syd Mead is, you just don't know it. He did all the design work for a little movie called Blade Runner. He did all the design work for a little movie called Tron. And I don't know if he's working on the new one or not, but I would think so, but I don't know. So yeah, he's the Hollywood guy. Now this guy, I'll tell you a story. We worked on a CD-ROM project with a guy, because again, that 10 years, I've got all kinds of cool stories there that are really cool. High-profile people I got to hang with, during those 10 years that are good cocktail impressing stories, those kind of things. This guy named Nick Posback, he was Syd Mead's personal assistant. Syd Mead is the kind of guy where when he draws these worlds and comes up with these worlds, they exist in his mind for real. Like they're really tangible in his mind. That's how his brain works. And to illustrate this, the story he was telling me was that one day he was trying to take some, whatever style of art it was that Syd had made, because Syd doesn't do the computer. He just does them. in whatever traditional. There it is, and then the other guy puts on the computer. So he's trying to get this drawing into the computer, and he's working with this shape, and polygons and trying to get all the parts in there, And Syd's like comes over, he leans over his shoulder, he says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm trying to get this, this thing in there, and I can't. It's just not looking right." And he goes, "Oh well, I rotated that 400 and or 127.65 degrees, or whatever." It's like, huh? So he brings up the dialog box, types, because on the computer it's absolute. You type in a dialog value, bam, you hit enter. He says immediately, boom, perfect, matches the drawing. That blew my mind hearing that story, because he knows mathematically, from a geometry standpoint, exactly how these items fit into there. So, amazing guy. So that's a cool. So we had this project that was called, let me think a minute, Avalon. And Avalon was to be a web. Well, let's start off. It was to be a game, computer game. Then it was to be like a web series, and it was to be a Saturday morning television show. And we worked with Bruce Sterling, who's a cyberpunk, one of the first cyberpunk authors. He wrote a lot of the script stuff. We worked with, and I got to work with, Syd Mead, doing all the visual design for some of the main things in the 3D renderings. And I got to do music for this kind of presentation video, kind of a pilot episode that we showed. Same thing. They came to me at 5 o'clock the night before South by Southwest. "Hey, we're having an open house tomorrow. We want to show Avalon in the big conference room, and we need to score." So I had to score this movie. And so I stayed up all night. We went to Jurassic Park. So I made a Jurassic Park scene when the thing is revealed, this big, beautiful rendering that Syd Mead has made. I have a little copy of the video somewhere. It was taken off, VHS or whatever. But that was cool. Syd Mead, And I got credits, Mark Wilson, music, Syd Mead, visual design by, Syd Mead, right, side by side on the credit roll. That's cool. No one else knows, no one else cares, but, the last short film we did, which for Doorpost last year, was kind of cool, because it's a very unique project. It was called Playland. And if you go to the Doorpost site and click on Bradley Jackson, which at this point is on the front page, and it goes to his page, you'll see all the films, and every film I've done the music for, it's on that list there. Playland was about these two brothers who go to a Playland pizza place, like Chuck E. Cheese, where they went as kids to have a kind of reunion birthday for one of the brothers, and their dad apparently left them when they had family problems or something. And they're now grown up, young men, but one brother hasn't quite grown up yet, And he's there, and he wants to steal the big giant robot in the Playland toy thing that's 1 million tickets that they never could win when they were kids. And the joke is they have, instead of the mechanical band, they wanted a real band, like these guys, these 80s rockers that never quite made it, that are still playing at the pizza place. So I had to write 4 songs for the band to be singing during the movie. So the score of the movie is basically the band in the background or in the shot, depending on what the scene is. And there's one little piece where they took my music and dropped it in I did a little instrumental version of it for one section. So that was a great project. This last film, The Man Who Never Cried, has some big name actors in it. It's got the guy that was in Mall Cop, not the main guy, but the second guy, the bad guy, Keir O'Donnell, Jess Wexler, who are both fairly going to be they're not top of the list actors, but they're up there. Hey, that's cool. That's a fun project. What else as far as fun projects? I've written 10 songs for Garth Brooks. That was another fun one. Got to write 10 songs for Garth Brooks. He got down to right before he was about to record them, and basically they decided to pull the plug on the whole project. And the way it works, I learned all this during all the software development stuff. Companies like Sony or whoever, when you have a big star like Garth Brooks, they pay $1 million or $500,000 for an option to pitch a project to him. It's the weirdest thing. We'll pay you $500,000 so you'll listen to us. We can option to pitch you stuff. It's something like that. So that's what they do. And so Sony shows up and goes, "All right, we have a deal with Garth Brooks, and we want to make these CD-ROM projects where Garth is a young Garth, little Garth, a kid Garth. And we want one to be on American folk heroes, like Paul Bunyan and Johnny Appleseed, and and we want one to be on holidays." And so we designed these activities and things over the software thing, and they made a little animated Garth. It was really bizarre. And so I have to come up. We have this activity called the Song Builder. We need 5 songs for about American holidays. Independence Day. Okay, what can I write about Independence Day? Write a song for Garth Brooks to sing about, young Garth, to sing about Independence Day. So I'm all right, I'll do a gospel thing. Our country celebrates Independence Day, or President's Day. That was President's Day, sorry. Our country celebrates President's Day, on Washington's birthday. It's a special day in the USA. Our country honors our nation in a special way. That President's Day. It was like this, So I wrote 10 songs, 5 for the thing, 5 for the. John Henry was a steel driving man, and he was born with a hammer in his hand. So it was like a country thing. And then I had to write one for Garth to sing. Well, my name is Garth Brooks, and I'm proud to say I was born right here in the USA. Silly songs, and so that was cool. It was Garth Brooks. Even though he never got recorded, I also got to record, and this is cool, for Austinites. I brought over, it's one of the few times I brought in outside musicians. I'm like, okay, this is for Garth Brooks, guys. Give me $500 to bring in some other musicians so it's not just me finally. And they gave me, okay, well, here's $500. So I brought in Champ Hood, who's a really well-known, if you know your Austin history.
Not around anymore.
He's not around anymore, unfortunately. Well, he came out to my little house in Georgetown and was supposed to be there for $300 worth of music, which is probably a couple hours. And he ended up staying for like 6 hours with the steel player. And they did all the tunes and tracked them all and then left. Great guy. And my AC was terrible in the way it worked too. So that's probably one of the coolest projects. So I have many projects that are fun, but it's mainly about the more exposure the project gets, the more I get excited because the budget usually gets higher and it looks better and sounds better. And more people are going to see it. And that means I might be one step closer to getting that carrot, so to speak.
My second question is, what single movie has the best score to it?
Oh my God, what a question. Impossible. There's so many different ways to look at that. Obviously Jaws wins that one hands down in terms of impact. Because it's so easy that it just wouldn't work without the score. So that one wins that. But what is the best score? That's impossible. I'll tell you I'll tell you my composer favorite. I'll kind of answer it without answering it, which is one of the most influential scores for me personally is not necessarily the most huge genius score, but I just think it's a very amazing score, and the more I found out about it, the better it was. And that is the score to the Omega Man. If you don't know what the Omega Man is, the Omega Man is I Am Legend. Okay, Will Smith knows what the Omega Man is. I Am Legend is the Omega Man, and the Omega Man is The Last Man on Earth, which is before the Omega Man, which is Vincent Price shot in Italy or Spain or something in black and white in the 60s, and it's terrible. The print is anyway. And that was based on a book by Richard Matheson called I Am Legend. So there's been 3 movie adaptations, if you don't count I Am Omega, which is done by that rip-off company that makes movies that puts out right when the other one's going to come out. They're terrible movies, and they purposely put the 2 stories together and made this cheap movie. Anyway, the score is by Ron Grainer. Ron Grainer is the English composer who you might know as the guy who did the Doctor Who soundtrack. The theme for Doctor Who that they're still using today is Ron Grainer. He did tons of British TV shows, and as I mentioned before, I like British horror, so I know a lot about British stuff. Ron Grainer did all the British TV shows of the period, and very, very few films. And so the Omega Man was one of the films he did for Warner Brothers. And the score, the running joke between me and my brother, that score was one of the main things that made me want to be a film composer, because the way the story was told with that score, the way it highlighted the emotion of the movie, every scene, everything about it was just cool. And I loved it. And I recorded it on cassette off the TV. I have my grandfather whistling in the background, and I'm going, because I'm trying to hear the music, And I would play that over and over as a kid growing up, And when I looked for the soundtrack, it was never released. And my brother would jokingly call me up and go, "Hey, I was in the bargain bin and I found the Mega Man." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, psych, And guess what? They're talking over a 20-year period. He would be screwing me basically. And I'm like, find the damn thing. And then Body Heat was the one that Vangelis did. But I wasn't into that one so much. But that was never released too. And he was getting a copy off the projector, that sort of thing. So one day, while I'm in the software business in the 90s, I check in the early 90s when the internet, because, hey, internet, we suddenly were taking classes in HTML and learned about this thing called internet. It's cool. It's going to be the future. And it just clicked in my brain, just like when I said, hey, game music. I should get into game music because I could do that. I said, hey, internet, soundtracks. And I searched. Lo and behold, they had released it. Somebody had put it together. Only 2,000 copies of the soundtrack. I ordered it, I get it, I open it up, I start reading, it has liner notes. Guess what I find out? I find out that Ron Grainer, and they're interviewing the guy from Warner Brothers who worked the main sound stage. they changed the recording style for that film, not the normal way they did things. The normal way they did things is with this sort of array recording system where you capture the sound of the orchestra in the space. Whenever you hear a recording of an orchestra, more important than the sound of the instruments, you're actually capturing the sound of the instruments in the space, the hall. That's more important than the instruments themselves in some ways. In this one, they used a close mic technique where everything was close mic, and they didn't have a lot of budget, so they used very small string sections. They're very small, and they brought them in at a separate time. And they multi-tracked the recording. He also utilized a huge organ, which was the forerunner to the synthesizer, big Yamaha organ, and it was so big it had to stay on the soundstage. So he would go into the soundstage to do the organ parts. Well, what I figured out through all the reading and everything is that basically he did what I do right now. Tape was playing, and he played the keyboard parts on the organ as he flew them in, as he tracked them in. And then he synced that with the other one and got the brass section and laid those parts down. And then they had this big clock pendulum that somebody made this thing that lowered into the water. And you'd hit it, made this really cool sound. He was one of the first guys to do that. And that's in the film too. And so the more I read, the more I figured out, I was like, he was doing what I do. And this is so cool. And then it turns out they put out the first version of the soundtrack. And the guy that did that, there's notes about him because it's his first project, and he was passionate about the music as well. And I find out there's this whole cult following of people like me, nerds who love the music for the Omega Man and Ron Grainer. And apparently, he had a confession to make. He put out a .21 where they added another release of the soundtrack because in the first version there were tapes missing that he fessed up he actually couldn't find in time for the release, because he was like, hey, we're putting this together, and all the tapes you had to roll all the tapes and sync them back up. And he realized that some of the keyboard parts were missing on some of the tracks, on 2 of the tracks, I think. And so he kept looking, and finally they found them in a pile of trash somewhere under a box or whatever. And so he got those and made the new releases. So he had a hidden recording of Ron Grainer conducting the kids at the end singing Old MacDonald's Little Farm. If you listen, if you ever watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. That's on the first one as a hidden track. So he took that off the re-release and added the ones with the thing so the 2 versions would be separate. So anyway, It was a very influential soundtrack to me, and so something I suggest you check out if you like history of stuff.
Okay. What sound editing software do you use, and what do you think is the best?
Editing, I don't need to edit. I just do it perfect the first time. No. Yeah, it's and from a sound design standpoint, the term sound editing would be a different package than one I use normally, and usually the task slightly different than what I'm doing most of the time. In the case of doing music scoring, when I'm doing sound work, then yes, I would mention something that I probably haven't used in a while, if that makes sense, because you're doing a lot of volume of work, and you need something that's more in tune for doing that type of chore. So I would recommend SoundForge, if it's still under that name these days, for doing soundtrack editing on the PC. I would recommend WaveLab. For music composition and for doing your mix and everything, for music composition, it's Cubase Audio. Cubase, Cubase. It's by Yamaha. It's a German company called Steinberg, but it's basically Yamaha now. It's been around forever. All my scoring stuff, I do that. Now the good news is music composers and music scoring software are quite up to the task of recording voices and bands and mixing sound music as well for film, sound for film. So I personally could just do everything in Cubase and be quite content. However, there's a package made by the same company that's designed for post-production work. It's called Nuendo, and it is by far I think the best thing out. And now you can get a Cubase add-on to basically make all the Cubase music tools available in Nuendo. It's the same engine, the same interface, same plugin architecture, all that. So I would just buy Nuendo if I had the money and buy the Cubase plugins, and I would be happy, and I could cover anything with that one software package. Other programs I use a lot are Reason by Propellerhead Software. It's virtual instruments and sequencing and stuff as well. I use it mainly for the sounds. What else? QuickTime Pro is an everyday tool. I use that to do all the stuff that a lot of people will use Final Cut and pull stuff back into Final Cut to remarry the audio to the video and things like that. It's really not necessary. It's a lot easier and faster. I can do it in a couple of keystrokes in QuickTime Pro and be done, for the stuff I'm doing anyway. Assuming you've done all your video work in Final Cut and you're totally happy, once you render that movie out, what's supposed to happen, guys, just a little hint, is you're supposed to get all your movie done, and you render that movie out, and other than color correction and stuff, you're not supposed to put it back in, you're not supposed to put it back on the timeline and change it. And then that film, that version can then go to the composer and he can work with the same version. And so there's really no reason, to go back there. Basically, do changes. Don't do any edits. So that the picture lock, picture lock's picture lock. So that the guy with it, nothing changes. I have got project after project where things change. The Man Who Never Cried, the film that's premiering, the one scene I had 1 minute and so many seconds in the middle of the film. It's this kind of walk up, character introduction, kind of training, comedic thing where at the end he pops his head out of the water, and he's holding him underwater. You don't know it, and it's kind of a Kill Bill style music. I scored the thing, timed it perfectly, starts here, ends here, and in the film, there's a scene in the film where the film is about the guy who doesn't cry. And he can't cry, and so he's going to go to his dad's funeral that week, and his most sad song is Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper. And the guy plays Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time on the guitar in this beautiful tear-jerking rendition at the funeral, and his dad's dead, and he's there, and this is the moment, if he's going to cry, this is it. They had licensing issues. Back to our same conversation. They thought they had clearance. They shot the scene with the big actor and the whole thing, budget, and they didn't get clearance. The other side of the clearance didn't give it to them, and they couldn't get it. There's even videos of Bradley pleading for Cyndi Lauper to help on Kickstarter and wherever, Vimeo. And so now what do? They had to reshoot that scene, which they did after I got done with my score. But then after I was done with my score and I was working on the trailer, which is a whole other horror story, they called me and said, in the middle of my little montage, he says, "And what's your favorite song?" And he's working out. He's like, "Cyndi Lauper, Time After Time." They had to cut that line. So they had to shorten the scene. So now I had to go back to my music and make a cut. Well, guess what? You can't just arbitrarily cut music. It's groups. It's most music. Our brains are used to hearing sets, groups of 8 or 4. It's 8 or it's 16. It's not 9. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. That's a phrase, right? Not 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Oh, stop there. It doesn't work. So it required me to do some really, it's a little bit odd in the middle of an 8 phrase, like a 4 phrase, which I was able to make work, but it's a little odd. It doesn't feel as good. And then the videographer had to go back and adjust a couple frames. And because I couldn't control that at that point, because now we're doing this back and forth thing, the final hit for the credits to pop up should have been exactly on that last big well hit, what I call a well hit. And the editor didn't do it. So if you the average person won't catch it, but when I watch it, I cringe, because now when that lasted, I spent weeks getting perfect, hitting that last hit when it goes, it's hit and then it comes up, just a couple frames, but he didn't want to change his edit, because he liked this part of that edit. So yeah, you got to watch for that stuff. Picture lock means picture lock. Then you send it off to your composer. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yes.
I'm trying to be cognizant that I get the question in there with all the good fun stories and all that stuff.
Well, I think I was the last one, so.
Is that it? Are we done?
I think we're done.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been fun.
Thank you, Mark.
Oh, forgot to hit roll.
That was very informative.
I hope so. I hope it wasn't too much stories and stuff.
Hey guys, we still need to do B-rolls.
So yeah, ask questions. I'll point to you.
We should have moved up here. What are we doing? Let's move up to the front.
Yeah, y'all can be in the front. I should sit in the audience too. That'd be fun. Just sit there and take the shirt coat off and just kind of like, in the back, in the very back. Yeah.
Sure. I think he's just gonna record that side anyway of the room.
Do we need to go over there? Take our chair over there? No, they don't need us.
Sure they do.
We do over the shoulder.
Y'all look so interesting.
And yes, last night, because I've been a week, and the actress is sending me an email going, "Hey, nothing's up on YouTube this week," because I just put one thing up last week, and I've got all this stuff going on. I was up till 1:30 last night editing her junk because she was griping, and I'm very little. But
Need somebody to,
she was in Miss Congeniality.
but
She's clipboard lady.
you need to put all this stuff on your website.
What? Yeah, I don't have time.